G'day legends, welcome back to our 5th episode of Viewer Mix Reviews. So go grab yourself some popcorn, chuck on some good headphones, maybe go and sit in front of your studio monitors and let's check out these mixes together. And as always, there's a disclaimer that mixing is totally subjective, so if the feedback that I give on these mixes you don't agree with, it's totally cool because we can all have different opinions on what makes a great mix. But if you think that the feedback that I give could help improve your mix, then why not give it a try and see how it turns out. So let's dive into it. Here is our first song. It's called Beautiful Genius. Super catchy, really digging this song. Sounds really good actually. That sounds kind of slack. It sounds really good. Let's jump ahead a bit. Okay, so I only have a couple of little things I'd like to offer on this track. Overall, I think you've done a really good job. It sounds nice. It's got a really good soundscape, like the stereo field sounds really good. I like all the vocal spatial effects and the reverbs and stuff you've chosen. A really cool, unique vocal tone. Nailed that kind of 80s drum tone too, which is really cool. So the first thing would be when the chorus hits, it would be great to hear like a crash or something kind of exciting for when the chorus hits. It's just missing that tiny bit of excitement on the initial front end of the chorus. Like just a psh, or like even a sound sweep, psh, like into the chorus, like that's kind of 80s, right? Just something with a little bit of top end excitement I think would really lift the chorus. The other thing is maybe you're going for like a mono kind of drum sound, but I'd probably like to hear the toms panned a little bit, just to give them a little bit of separation from each other. There might be a little bit of panning. Maybe I just want to hear more panning. Now, when I was listening to this mix, I did feel like it was just missing some kind of energy and I couldn't really put my finger on it. And I actually think it just needs like a tiny bump in the mid-range. And it was somewhere around like 800, 900 hertz, just doing about like half a dB to a dB with a kind of wide bell. Sounded pretty good to me. Sounded like it gave this mix just a little extra push. Like it's so slight, but the vocals sound thicker, the drums sound thicker, and it's not like it all of a sudden sounds muddy because we're boosting the mid-range. It just sounds more energetic as well. So that's not really like a go-to place for me when I start boosting things, but that's what I felt like this mix could benefit from. And that could just be a little thing that you could add to your mix bus.
Missing the target, just playing the part in your mind all the time. You're in for genius. Your mind's a labyrinth, and I'm your teacher.
So that's my couple of little thoughts on this track. Otherwise, you've done a really good job. Sounds great. If you guys want to support the channel, check out the description link below. There's plenty of ways you can do this. There's an affiliate link for Sweetwater, so if you buy your gear online through those guys, using that link throws a small commission back to the channel, and that helps support the time that goes into making these videos. If you're looking for some awesome new plugins, then check out the links below to Kiive Audio, Black Sword Audio, Safari Pedals, Audimee. There's so many cool links below that you can check out, and using any of those links helps support this channel, as well as checking out my website, checking out the drum samples, mix courses. Doing that is a massive support. All right, let's check out the next song. This one is called Echoes of Sorrow.
Like a fading candlelight, just trying to stay alive. You're fighting so hard just to get through this night. And letting go is hard, they say, and time will ease the pain while you're standing on the edge looking down. In the shadows we walk, never reaching the light. Hear the
It's a nice sounding intro, but there are a couple of things that are kind of grabbing me straight away, and that's that there's a little too much presence going on, particularly in the voice. And then I think when the acoustic guitar starts strumming, it's kind of like the guitar and the vocal have presence in the same area, and there's a bit of a build-up happening. But also, the level of compression on the vocal is bringing the breaths really forward, and they just sound too loud, in my opinion. Like, I would go through and gain those down a little bit and just make the breaths a little more subtle. Maybe it's there for dramatic effect. I just don't like hearing the breaths that loud.
pain and tears, we look back our life while trying.
So it's somewhere in this kind of upper mids area where there's like a harshness in the vocals, even with the breaths, like that sound is kind of harsh and it's enhanced through this frequency. As well as when the guitar starts strumming, the pick and the presence of the acoustic seems to be around that 4K area as well. And it's sort of just building up in like a kind of scratchy sort of way, like against my ears, it feels a little grating. So I feel like you could pull back a little bit on the voice, or maybe use some dynamic EQ to kind of rein in those sort of spiky frequencies, and maybe just pull back a tiny bit of presence on the acoustic guitar up around that 3 to 4K area. I think that would kind of make the intro sound a little bit warmer and a little bit more intimate. And then if you duck those breaths down a little bit, it'll just make the compression feel not as hard. I also feel like there's maybe a little bit too much pitch correction going on in the vocal, like it's really audible and obvious that it's happening.
They say, and time will ease the pain while
Like, sounds like some notes have really been flattened out. And if you're working on your own vocal, sometimes you really feel like you have to pitch correct it too much, because we are our own worst critics and we kind of want it to be super perfect. The fact is, the harder you push pitch correction, and in a song like this where it's kind of like an intimate setting, it just sounds a little unnatural and out of place, where you'd probably be better off having a tiny bit of pitchiness and having a bit of authenticity in there, because it just shows like that raw emotion a little bit. That's just my 2 cents on kind of like the pitch correction there. And I'm not sure, maybe you're using like flex pitch or some alternative like auto tune or something like that. Whereas if you were using maybe Melodyne and just being a little gentler on the settings, I think you'd get a better result. Maybe you are using Melodyne, but you've just kind of flattened the note. So I would just make sure you don't flatten notes out too much. Leave a little bit of that natural character in there. All right, let's keep listening.
Trying to find a reason to fight. Lay your head down, let your tears dry out. I'll promise you everything will be alright. In the shadows we walk, never reaching the light. Hear the echoes of sorrow whispering in the night.
Okay, so it's really cool when the band kicks in, like it just sounds really massive and you get that nice deep low end come in after not having any bass for so long. So that is a really nice impact. But then also once the guitars really hit it there at the chorus, it does feel like there's just too much mid-range happening in the mix. I feel like we need to kind of address some stuff that's happening in there and then maybe sort of like sweeten the sound of this mix a little bit. So I think that the piano and the electric guitars and the vocal are all fighting for a region around kind of like 700-800 hertz. So let's have a little listen to what happens if we kind of cut around there.
In the shadows we walk, never reaching the light. Hear the echoes of sorrow whispering in the night.
So you can hear like there's a lot of the melody in the piano there, and then there's also, it sounds like a bit of a boost in the electric guitars there, and then there is a bunch of vocal there. So we've got this build up there. It's kind of like this grinding mid-range to me. And then if we dealt with a little bit of that high mid as well, like we talked about earlier. So we're making a little bit of space there, dealing with a little bit of that build up in the mids, we're dealing with a little bit of the harshness, but I also feel like it's lacking a little bit of air once everything comes in. So maybe the drums kind of need a little bit of sparkle on the top end.
Lay your head down, let your tears dry out. I'll promise you everything will be alright. In the shadows we walk, never reaching the light.
So I also feel like the low end just needs a little boost as well. I'm kind of doing a few moves here. What I feel like is the balance is a little bit skewed to the mids and the mix doesn't sound very open, especially once everything's happening. It just gets this really closed in kind of sound, and rather than sort of sounding big and open and like massive, it sort of just sounds like everything's piling on top of each other.
Hear the echoes of sorrow whispering in the night. Through pain and tears, we look back our lives while trying to find a reason to fall.
So to me, that sounds a lot nicer. Like we've opened the mix up. We've got a little bit more like sub and thickness with the low end, got that kick kind of pumping through, a little bit of sparkle with the cymbals on the top end, even like a little bit of air in the vocal, cutting away some of that harshness and then just like pulling back where a lot of things are building up. And you can hear it opens up and the vocals actually sound a lot clearer and everything sounds a lot clearer and a lot bigger. So I know we're affecting the whole mix like when we do these kind of moves, but if you did these things to the areas I'm talking about, kind of like cutting some harshness out of the vocals as well as the acoustic guitar, a little bit of air to the drums, maybe the vocals as well, and then cutting a little bit of this 700, 800 hertz out of the vocals, the piano, the electric guitar. It could just be like a little bit in each of those, or maybe you could just sacrifice one of those. It could mainly be the electric guitars that need a cut here, and then you'll let through the melody of the piano a little bit more. But even so, maybe you might need to sidechain the vocal to the piano so that it kind of ducks the piano a little bit and it's sort of making way for the vocal at the same time without just completely cutting it out. So there's a couple of ways you could go about doing that, and then just kind of boosting the low end in your drums a little bit, maybe just on your drum bus, adding a little bit of a low shelf, or even just beefing up your kick drum, maybe just boosting a little bit of low end in your bass guitar as well. That would be my kind of thought process to kind of like tighten this mix up, make it sound a little bit more open. Overall, like it's definitely on the right track. It sounds really cool, and that's just my takeaway from my initial listening. But it's a really cool arrangement. I love how it starts small and then it just like kicks in. Like the dynamics are really good, and I think if you just maybe try a couple of these little tweaks, I think that would really sweeten the mix up. All right, on to our next one. This one is called Come What May. Let's check it out.
Bye, Bernardina, goodbye. Bye.
Just like holy vocal air. There's just so much air on the vocal.
Easy come, easy go. Somebody once told me so, but Bernardina said the only way out is through. Remember being a bomb in the Cajun sun, water tower skyline, which you started from. I'm stumbling round the deepest shade of blue. Come one day, come one day, dark and bright again, dark and bright again. Lord, she's on her way to the stars, oh, to the stars, oh,
Okay, so that vocal air is like just the main thing that's grabbing me. It's like, it's really intense. Just that like sizzle on the top end. Personally, I just don't like hearing that much air in a vocal. Like it sounds a little unnatural. A big part of me just wants to kind of like go like, kind of like chop that off. You know, compared to like it's just really harsh. So on your vocal bus, I'd just be doing something like that, almost at like 10K, just rolling off that air. It just sounds harsh. Just rein that in a little bit, I think.
bye, Bernardina, goodbye. Bye, Bernardina, goodbye.
The other thing is, I feel like even though the mix is kind of wide and stereo, I'm not hearing a lot of difference across the stereo field. It sounds like stereo sounds down the middle that are like just sort of spread out, as opposed to like kind of sounds that are spread across the mix. I'm not sure if that's correct, but it just sounds like everything's kind of stereo, so nothing sounds that stereo. It's sort of just getting a little jumbled.
Come one day, come one day, dark and bright again, dark and bright.
Like I'd like to hear some of those sounds separated a little bit and just get that stereo field to like open a bit more, where you are catching different sounds on the left and right, as opposed to the same sound just spreading across both speakers. So I guess I'd like to hear a little bit more separation of sounds and just like that stereo field open up a little bit. And it just feels like the middle of the mix is kind of clouded and there's a lot going on there as well at the same time. So even the drums feel a little lost and the bass feels a little unclear. Like it sounds big, but it's like nothing sounds crisp.
On her way.
sounds kind of like harsh. I'm not trying to be harsh. I'm just trying to describe what I'm hearing. It's just like a lack of clarity to the sounds. And I'd probably like to hear like the drums, like the snare kind of just cut through a little bit more.
To the stars.
It could just be a little bit more pronounced, like maybe bring out some of those upper mids a little more just to help it like come forward in the mix. Like the kick's got a good thump to it. It's just like the snare's a little lost in there. And I really think the air on the vocals is hiding a lot of the mix because our ears are really drawn to the brighter sound. It brings it to the front of the mix. And so because there's so much air in those vocals, just like really focusing on that, everything else sounds a little bit like kind of subdued behind that. Whereas if we could get like a good balance between having those bright vocals but other sounds that are bright too that kind of come in and out of the mix, or just like the snare just having a little bit more cut, I think that would just make it sound a little bit clearer. I know that's not like anything totally clear like EQ this or do that, but that's kind of what I'm hearing with this mix. It's mainly about like getting sounds separated and panning them out a little differently, and then like making space down the middle for the vocal, get the bass a little bit clearer, get your snare snapping through a little bit better, dial back some of that air in the vocals so other things stand out. That's kind of mainly what I'm hearing here. Definitely a cool song and like sounds really big. It just needs a couple of tweaks, I think, to just like get it sitting together a little bit nicer. All right, on to the next one. All right, I don't know how to pronounce this song, but it's a nice kind of orchestral arrangement and the song title is up there, so you can check that out. And let's give it a listen. Nice dynamic change. I like those spacey keys. I feel like the guitars may be MIDI. Maybe the whole thing's MIDI. It's a nice arrangement. I'm just going to skip ahead a little bit. Epic. Epic little sample there. It sounded really cool. Like the dynamics, all the parts, they work together really nicely here. I think you've done a really nice arrangement so far. I am curious though, can you tell us in the comments, is that acoustic guitar MIDI? It almost sounds like the transitions are just not quite human. Like you don't hear any like string noise or anything like that. Like they're just like super clean getting from chord to chord. Curious to know. Let's have a listen to this next bit. Okay, so pretty cool kind of climatic section there, but I do have one little thought, and that is just like on the sound used between those two sections, it almost gives the idea that we're about to go into something a little bit bigger and maybe something a little bit more sampled and electronic. Because that sound is very digital and it's like a boom, like, I don't know, like a theatrical boom, and then it's got like that filter sweep sound. It's not like a cymbal swell that you would hear with an orchestral arrangement. it makes me feel like we're about to get like some fat beat coming over the top, which could sound really cool, by the way. But then we just go back to like just the nice orchestral arrangement that you've got going on. And so that feels a little out of place to me. Like maybe like you could have some sort of thunderous boom, and maybe it's more of like a timpani kind of sound, and then even like a timpani roll with some orchestral cymbal swell coming back in. That would feel more fitting to what's kind of happening so far. Just what I feel when I heard that. Like I was like, oh, here comes the beat, and then oh, we're back into how it was before. So just my feelings about that sample sound. You know, I want to hear like a massive beat drop there. That might be a little nitpicking, but that's what those samples kind of make me think when I hear them. You know, it's cool hearing different instruments coming in throughout. I got some sort of like harmonic electric guitar stuff happening here, which is cool. Like those deep keys. Some of it almost sounds like a little like Lord of the Ring-ish. So you've definitely used the stereo space really well. Like it doesn't sound like it's lacking in any places, and the kind of difference in sounds that are coming in and out throughout the mix, the dynamics, overall, like I think it sounds really good. You've done a great job. Just those kind of like sweepy sample sounds. I could hear a couple of cymbal swells in there as well that kind of end in a filter sweep. They just feel a little out of place for this kind of arrangement. That sound at the end, like it's really cool, but at the same time, like some of the notes are very like obviously MIDI, and it would be cool to hear that sound. I don't know what sound that is, I can't put my finger on it, but it would probably be cool to like just hire a session player and get them to do that stuff. Anything that's kind of like really down the middle of the mix, like the focal point, it's really good to probably try and get a real sound. Like MIDI can go really far, like don't get me wrong, but blending real sounds with MIDI creates an even deeper level of authenticity. So if you have like a solo violin section, most of the time you're going to be able to pick up whether it's MIDI, unless you're like really, really crafty with MIDI. I know there are some people out there who can get MIDI sounding pretty darn close. Again, like getting that real sound in there, and you don't have to like get everything real, just get like a couple of real sounds that are the focus, and then blend it around the MIDI, and it starts to sound a bit more organic all round. That's my only kind of thoughts, because I do hear like a lot of MIDI throughout it, but if it was a blend, like a, you know, a little bit of natural stuff in there with it too, you know, like one string player with all of the other MIDI strings, or like, you know, just whatever that instrument is the end, make that authentic, and then maybe get a couple of like real cymbal swell samples and stuff like that. I think that could just like help take it to the next level. But overall, like, that's really cool. So great job on that arrangement. So you guys have sent in a lot of cool songs. It's awesome to hear the stuff you're working on. All right, this is our last one, and it is Future Light. Let's check it out. Okay, so before we go too far into it, a couple of things sort of straight away. It's a little like on the harsh end of things, like as far as brightness goes, especially that kind of like as soon as it hit, like it's kind of like 5K upwards, like really grabs your ears. Yes, all of that stuff. So I feel like the cymbals just feels like there's a little bit too much brightness presence in those, and that's probably around like 6K. I mean, you can see the frequency jumping out here. That's like the hi-hats. That's kind of quite bright. So it's pretty drastic, but I feel like the overheads must have some kind of high shelf or like just a big boost around here, or maybe it's just the cymbals or the choice of mics, whatever it is bringing out these frequencies like pretty hectic. You know, I wouldn't carve that stuff out of like the snare drum and all of that. Like, I know we're affecting everything, but like, let's just focus on what we're hearing with the cymbals and see if we could dial that back. You know, we could get those a little bit mellower and then still have the snap of the snare. Like, that'll sound much nicer. Same with the tambourine, like it's a little like harsh sounding. Like this stuff up here, you could probably like low pass the tambourine a little bit. Just get rid of some of that like harshness up here, roll that away. Just get a nicer tambourine sound. And I do that often on tambourines, like they just be like really bright, so you might just low pass them a little bit.
Life was over, lying to everyone I heard, caught up in my sin, headed for my end.
You just hear those hi-hats just really, but I would actually be like, same as the tambourine, kind of like low passing some of that out.
You were there to pull me out, save me from my disaster.
Just get them a little warmer sounding.
Ruins of the life I led, exhausted in my running, shame from all the hurting, show me how to live instead.
Kind of digging the snare, like it's got a nice crack to it.
You are the way.
The cymbals are just overkill. Like, just turn them down. Like the whole mix is getting real harsh up here. Even like the vocal air.
You are the way, the truth, the lies.
You haven't been using Stephen Slate's Fresh Air on everything, have you? Just joking. But yeah, I feel like just like the high frequencies really need to be reined in a bit on this mix. The low end, it's either that or we're lacking in the low end, like.
You are the way, the truth, the lies. I lost you like my way. I lost you like my way. I lost you like my way to you. I need sleep, tired of running. Wandered so far, I'm lost in it all. Nothing can bring me back. That's when I see you. Light shining through, I stumble and I crawl. Save me from it all. Time is running out and I failed you again, loose like a thread, desperate to repent. I am reckless.
You know, like that's a quick kind of grab at some EQ points there. But that's kind of what it feels like is happening with the mix. Like it's a little skewed to the high end, and it would be great to hear the kick pump through a little bit more, hear a little bit more like bass guitar kind of pumping through, or if it's synth bass, just like whatever that is, kind of like get that sort of standing out a little bit more in the mix. Yeah, just because it feels like we're skewing more to those high frequencies, and it just like has an overall harshness about it. Even around like 2K gets this like build up on the vocals and some like guitars or synth sounds that are happening. that could also be drum cymbals as well, kind of in there. Like 2K can be pretty gross in the overhead. Warm up the vocals a little bit with around 800 hertz. Not a lot, just a little bit. It's raining, sorry guys. It's kind of dealing with that like ultra high end as well. It's sort of that digital sound. If we can roll a little bit of that off, it'll really clean up the mix. So have a listen to that again. It just feels like the kick's a little lost in there. There's not a lot of focus on that bass drum. Even the bass feels a little lost in there. And all we're hearing is like cymbals and like air on vocals and just kind of a little bit of harshness overall. I am reckless. I am crazed. I'm a sinner. Save me from myself. So in here you got your harmonies in there. That could be a great opportunity to add a little bit of width to your vocals. Maybe something like waves doubler or micro shift, something on the vocals to kind of spread that double out since it doesn't sound like it's double tracked. And that could be a great way of adding some width to the vocals in the chorus.
Future light, you are all wrongs made right. You are the way, the truth, the life. You are the Holy One, the fount all love flows from.
Here the vocal's a lot warmer when we pull a little bit of that 10K out. Maybe it doesn't need to be that dramatic as what we're doing with the drums, but it just feels like there's an overemphasis on air happening.
In you my battles are all won. You are my future light. You are all wrongs made right. You are the way, the truth, the life. You are the Holy One.
I think that's a cool section where you're going into those sort of sampled drums there. But that's my overall takeaway on this mix, is just that it needs a bit of warming up and just dealing with some of those harsh frequencies. I wouldn't necessarily throw that EQ on the mix and say that's done, call it a day. But if you can approach like the cymbals, cutting some harshness out of those and some brightness out of the tambourine and the shakers, take that edge off them, and then same with the vocals, just dealing with a little bit of too much air or like harshness around the upper mids, just thickening them up, bringing out the kick a bit more, bringing out the bass a little bit more, just kind of warming the mix up, just so it sounds bigger and fatter. Overall, the song's really cool. It just has a demo-ish quality about it because of those kind of harsh sounds. I think you just need to like smooth it out a little bit more. Sometimes when we're a little unsure, we tend to make things brighter because we want to make them stand out. But don't be afraid to have some sounds a little bit darker, a bit thicker, a bit warmer, so that the mix has an overall better balance. So I really appreciate everyone who sent in some mixes, and all of you guys who are watching along. I hope you enjoyed the video. So maybe you agreed with me on some things, maybe you disagree with some of the things I had to say, but overall I hope that there are some tips there that might be able to help you improve your mixes. And if not, thanks for sending your track in anyway. And if you're interested, check out this next video coming up where I take you through my one-shots sample pack.